Good morning, welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for another debate show. This morning we're looking at the best players at each championship side. I'm your host, George Dagless, and joining me this morning is Billy Mulley. Billy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Looking forward to having our picks for this question.
Yeah, certainly a lot to discuss. 24 clubs we're going to rattle through in the next sort of 20 to 30 minutes, picking the best player we feel is at each side. So let's get straight into it and kick off with Barnsley. Barnsley haven't had a great start to the season, I think it's fair to say, but they'll be looking to pick up. Billy, who's your pick? Who do you feel is the best player at the Tykes?
I've gone for Callum Styles. I think what he offers is flexibility. We've seen last season operating as left wing back this season, playing more games, central midfield, and I think that his ability to step into the left wing back role last year and what he'd done in terms of getting forward and proved to be a real reliable defender as well. So I think he's a player that perhaps hasn't had the best of times this season, like the majority of Barnsley players, because that's where they are. They sort of need that confidence instilled back in them. But he's a player that, in my eyes, can go a long way.
Yeah, I have to agree, actually. Callum Styles was my pick too, so hopefully we won't have the same pick for everyone. But yeah, Callum Styles a really good shout. As you say, great versatility, very good on the ball. Probably would have said Alex Mowat last year, obviously, but he's not there anymore. I think Mads Anderson is a good shout. Obviously, just come back into the team, looks defensively, might be able to help them along a little bit, Barnsley. But I think Callum Styles is a very good shout to open this one up. Billy, let's move to Birmingham. Who have you picked for the Blues?
It might be a little bit of an out there shout, but I think from recent games, I think he definitely deserves to be in question for this, and that's Riley McGree. I think what he's done is he's come in, made that position his own, in terms of creating chances, getting the ball and progressing play. He's excellent, and he's a player that quite deservingly Birmingham want to keep past January. They don't want to see him go back to America, and you can tell why, especially with Heath Chung out now, who probably would have been my go-to pick if he wasn't injured right at this moment. But yeah, I think McGree is a player that possesses a lot of talent, and I think he'll tear the MLS apart if he goes back to America and doesn't come back to the Championship.
Yeah, certainly a good shout. Obviously, Chung would have been my pick too, as well, had he still been at Birmingham. But I think McGree is a very good shout. Billy, Birmingham got a number of decent young players. My personal pick was going to be Mark Roberts, actually, a real regular presence in the middle of the defence. You can usually rely on him at the heart of the Birmingham back line, which obviously Lee Bowyer is obviously reliant upon for Birmingham to try and climb the table a little bit more. So there are picks for Birmingham, McGree and Mark Roberts. Blackburn Rovers next. Billy, who you pick for them?
I think it's hard to look past Ben Brereton Diaz. I think what he's done since he's come back from Chile and stepping into that Adam Armstrong role has been brilliant. And I struggled a little bit with Blackburn because I think they've got a lot of very good players, and I do expect them to do very well this season. But I think Brereton Diaz's goal scoring record, his sort of flair about him at the moment, everything's pointing towards a successful season. I think I said it yesterday that if Mitrovic wasn't having an abnormal season, then I think he'd be well within sort of breaking that Tony record. And as I said, there's a couple of players. I think Darragh Lenihan is brilliant as well. I like the fullbacks as well, Ryan Nyambe and Pickering as well, two very good players. And I think Poveda and Kadra can also become really, really good players this season. But for me, it's Brereton Diaz that just about edges it.
Yeah, I must admit, I have to agree with you there. You just have to look at the stats this season for Brereton Diaz. 13 goals so far. Like you say, if Mitrovic wasn't having an absolutely mental season where he's already hit 20 goals, there'd be plenty more talking about him. But perhaps for Blackburn's cause, they'll be quite pleased that people aren't talking about him as much as they perhaps should. Like you say, some other good players you could mention, likes of Lewis Travis, Harry Pickering, Therese Dolan as well. I think he's going to be a very, very good player for Blackburn in the future, and they'll be looking to keep hold of him as long as possible. But I think Ben Brereton Diaz is a very good shout for Blackburn at the moment in terms of their best player currently. Still on the Bs, there's plenty of teams beginning with B in the Championship. Billy, we're going to go to Blackpool next. Who's your pick for them?
For Blackpool, I found this quite difficult because they're a team that I think are operating very well together. I think all parts are working, and that makes it quite hard to pick out an individual. But sort of looking at it a little bit further, I think Shane Lavery, what he's done since he's come over from Northern Ireland, it's sort of, when a player comes over from Northern Ireland, you don't kind of know what level he will be at, but I think he's a player that adapted to the league very quick. And I know he's injured at the moment, but I think once he returns, he's going to be very, very important. He's a player that likes to operate on the last shoulder, but he's also got that intelligence. He's got that knack for scoring goals, and I think he's a player that will shine in this Blackpool side, sort of full of creativity and always looking for an outlet ball, which Lavery always is. I think that once he's back fit, then sort of sky's the limit for Blackpool this season.
Yeah, I think it's pleasing as well for Blackpool, the amount of players that have come up with them from League One and adapted. I'm going to pick Jerry Yates. Actually scored 5 goals in the Championship so far this season. I think that's pretty decent going. Obviously very important for them in League One last year. So Yates is my pick for Blackpool. One final team beginning with B, and that's Bournemouth up next. Who have you picked for the Cherries, Billy? There's plenty to go through here.
Yeah, I think similar to Blackpool, they're a team that are operating very well together at the moment, and all parts are coming together. I mean, you've got the likes of Zamora and Anthony, who are sort of the more youthful players that have been shining. Got Solanke scoring goals. Christie, who's really come into it this season. I've been really impressed with what he's doing. Jack Stacey as well at right back's come back into the side and is looking very strong. But I'm going to go for Gary Cahill for what he's done, and I think that's going to be the difference between what was a low playoff finish last year and going on to get promotion this season. Conceded just 10 goals with him in the side, and I know before they've had Steve Cook, who's also got that experience and that leadership, but I think Cahill's another level, and I think that's what we're seeing this season.
Yeah, Gary Cahill's been very important for Bournemouth. He obviously brings that Premier League and international experience he's got. Been very good for them as they set the early pace in the Championship. My pick will be Philip Billing. In some respects, you might be surprised he's still there. You could potentially see him in the Premier League, but Bournemouth managed to keep hold of him. He's had a great season again so far, 6 goals and 3 assists. I think Dom Solanke is a good shout as well. Like Brereton Diaz having a great season in front of goal, but obviously just in that sort of shadow of Mitrovic at the moment at Fulham. But my pick's Billing for Bournemouth. Let's move to Bristol City. Who's your pick for the Robins, Billy?
I think an honourable mention has to go to Andreas Weimann. I think he's such an attacking threat, and he's a player that's seemingly carried them a little bit with his goal scoring and progressive play this season. But I want to go for Noah Masengo, because I don't know if it's just every time I watch him, but he just looks a player that's too good for this division. I don't know if he just turns up against Luton and when I watch him on TV, but he's a player that, always manages to shine and got so much potential, and I don't know if it sort of stretches beyond what I've seen, but he's a player that he's just brilliant for me. He's such a young player and he's got a big future ahead of him. Yeah,
Masengo's a real talent. It's hard to believe he's still only 20. It feels like he's been around for quite a few years now in the Championship. A real quality player. I think someone like Antoine Semenyo as well got great potential, great quality. He'll be looking to play for Bristol City a bit more than he has so far this season. My personal pick was going to be Weimann. In fact, 7 goals so far this year in the Championship, a couple of assists too. I think he always seems to step up when he's needed as well. He's a real top quality player, and what you can always rely on him as well is commitment and work rate. He's one of those players that you can always guarantee he's going to put maximum effort in and normally chips in with goals. So he's my pick for Bristol City. Up next, Cardiff. Been a tough season so far for the Bluebirds, but who's your pick here, Billy?
I think for me it has to be Kiefer Moore. Just a very, very important source of goals. We've seen at the weekend, and he just proves that if he gets the service, then there's no better, well, maybe Mitrovic, but there's not many better strikers in the division. If presented with chances, he knows where the goal is. He has known for years. He's displayed it in a Welsh shirt, and given that Cardiff can sort of get out the place that they're in at the moment, then I think he can come and be really important. I think that with Cardiff as well, they've got a very good academy, and they've got youth players coming through at the moment at an alarming rate. And sort of they're all attackers as well, they seem to be. So it's quite an exciting time for Cardiff, and especially if they can keep hold of someone like Kiefer Moore, who will always score goals when presented with the opportunities.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think Keith Moore, again at the weekend, obviously helped beat Huddersfield late on with his 2 goals. Just going to be really key for them to try and pull away from that drop zone. That's what they're going to be looking to do in the weeks ahead after the international break. Obviously, went to the Euros with Wales as well. Seems like he's very much at the peak of his powers right now. And like you say, if you do give him the service, he's going to score goals at this level. And obviously was linked with potential moves to the Premier League as well in the summer. So, plenty to like about Keith Moore. And I do have to agree with you there that he, right now, definitely Cardiff's best player. Up next, Coventry City, having a great season so far in the Championship. Who have you got, Billy, for this one?
I've got Callum O'Hare. He's a player that I've watched quite a lot from when he was playing in League One with them, and I've just been really, really impressed with the rate he's progressed and how influential he's become. He's a player that always looks to get in behind the midfield and just in front of the defence. He always manages to find pockets of space, and his technical ability is up there with the very best in the league. He's also someone that works really, really hard, and I think that's why he's been so successful under Mark Robins, because all of those factors come together to make such a key player for Coventry, and I think that helps Gyökeres shine as well, who's a very close second. But yeah, I think for me, O'Hare, what he can do and sort of the ceiling as well, he can go all the way for me. He can become an established Premier League player in the near future.
Yeah, there are sort of shades with O'Hare and Jack Grealish. Obviously, O'Hare's not at that level yet, but you can sort of see those kind of similarities. I was very close to picking him, but I've gone the other way. I've gone for Victor Gyökeres. Great start to the season he's had. He's been great in terms of helping Coventry get into the position where they are in the table. There's perhaps times, particularly when he was at Swansea, where a few people perhaps doubted him, but so far this year he's really shown what he can do at Championship level, and he'll be looking to try and build on the 9 goals he's got so far in the Championship and really try and help Coventry seal a playoff place in the new year when it comes. Up next, Derby County. Obviously, it's been quite tough so far for Derby, Billy, but they've got some decent players on their books. Who have you picked here?
Yeah, they do have some really good players. You think of Ravel Morrison coming in, Jagielka as well, Curtis Davies as well has been brilliant. They've got one of the best defensive records. But for me, Graham Shinney, is part of our underrated show as well, and he's a player that still I don't think gets the plaudits he deserves. I think he's a tough tackling, but also a really good on the ball player as well. His vision in creating attacks, but he's also got that ability to read the game, and I think that's helped Derby dominate the majority of midfield battles that they've had this season. I think in terms of possession, in terms of making the opposition work, Derby have been very good this season, and I think that all stems from Graham Shinney. I think he arrived as a left back who could play centre mid, and now he's become, in my opinion, one of the best centre mids in the division, and I think he can continue, and I think he's going to be key if they are going to get out the situation they're in and progress up the league a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout. I mean, there's one player that been forgotten a little bit. Christian Bielik obviously had that nasty injury back in January, another knee problem. I think once he does get back to full fitness, he's going to be really important for Derby. My pick's Curtis Davies. Like you mentioned earlier, real experience. Derby have got a decent defensive record, despite where they obviously are in the table. I think he's going to be crucial in trying to get them out of trouble and guide them through what's obviously been a tumultuous time. Wayne really needs those leaders on the pitch, and in Curtis Davies, you've certainly got someone like that at the Rams. Up next is Fulham. Billy, I think we're probably going to agree on who it is, although there are plenty of options, obviously, at the Craven Cottage that you could go for.
100%, and sort of the majority of players within Fulham squads, if you put them in any other side in the division, they'd probably win this. But I think we have to say Mitrovic has just been unbelievable again. I do think his goals tally has been helped a lot by the service he gets, and that's a credit to the players they do have in attacking positions. But to score 20 goals in 17 games, scoring at a rate of a goal every 74 minutes this Championship season is unbelievable. And to be on 20 goals by early November is just something you'd never imagine to see. And it's credit to him, because he didn't have the best of seasons last time out. It was more to do with things going off the pitch, but he's recovered well and he's become such an integral player and a big reason why we expect Fulham to go on and reach glory this season.
Yeah, I have to agree. You can't really argue with the fact that he's got 20 goals by November. That is just pretty much a joke, those stats. He just, when he's in the Championship, you know what he's going to get, but even by his standards, he's been unbelievable in the second tier so far. Fulham obviously have plenty of quality. I think Jean-Michel Seri deserves a good shout in midfield. He's come into his own. Obviously, his career at Fulham didn't start as auspiciously as he would have liked, but this year he's been really integral in the middle of the park, and obviously they've got some fantastic players as well, like Harry Wilson and Harrison Reed. But I think you have to agree that Mitrovic right now is arguably the best player in the Championship, let alone at Fulham. Up next, we've got Huddersfield Town. Billy, who's your pick for them?
I've gone for Lewis O'Brien. I think they do have lots of attacking talents. Think of Sinani, you think of Karoma, that they do have some very good players going forward. But I think it's Lewis O'Brien who adds so much to them, and I think he'd be a big loss if he did depart in January or in the summer again. I think what he brings is everything you can ask for from a midfielder. He's gritty, he's determined, he's got that tenacious side to him, but he's also got that flair on the ball, the ability to pick out a pass and progress the play. And yeah, I think he's got every little bit to succeed in the future and go on to be a really good, consistent Premier League player. And as I say, I think if you take him out the side, then it's a lot. I think a big thing with Huddersfield is their pressing, their intelligence when pressing, and their relentlessness when actually something is triggered. So I think Lewis O'Brien is a player that is the perfect player in the Carlos Corberán's side when doing that. And for me, he's a player that if you take him out the side, then Huddersfield are nowhere near as good as they are.
Like you say, Huddersfield do have some really good attacking players. I'm going for another in Sorba Thomas. I think he's having a real sort of formative year, really, at the moment. Only 22 still, but he's got 8 assists so far in the Championship. Got his call up as well now to the Welsh national team and played for them a couple of times. Plenty of VFL sides were interested in him when he was at Boreham Wood. Huddersfield managed to get him, and I think they're really starting to see the best of him. I think he could certainly kick on and become a really top player in the Championship in the years ahead. Up next, Billy, Hull City. They're obviously having a little bit of a tough time of it at the moment in the Championship, but who have you picked for them?
I've gone for George Honeyman, but it's a very close one for me. I think Honeyman missed a fair bit of the season and that they lack creativity in that time. And when he's come back and now he's back to full fitness again, I think that's reappearing. I think he was brilliant last season. Big reason why they were so successful and went on to win the league. And he's a player that didn't really happen for him in the Championship when they were relegated, but he's a player that I think's learned from that, and he's growing in influence as this season progresses, and I think he'll be really important. But I also think that's quite harsh on Jacob Greaves and Deschamps Bernard, because Hull have actually been quite good defensively this season. They've really limited teams to not very much, and when they do get beat, it doesn't seem to be by too heavy of a scoreline, because I think those two have established a really, really good partnership. And I think those two players can go on to really big things because they're both still 21 years old, and playing like that in the Championship, I think it's quite exciting for Hull.
Yeah, I think Honeyman's a really good shout. They'll be looking for him to build on his weekend performance at Barnsley. The player I've gone for, though, is Keane Lewis Potter. Only 20 years old. He's been a real regular so far for the Tigers this season and probably been their brightest spark attacking-wise. 3 goals and a couple of assists. He's averaging over 2 shots a game as well, which for a whole team that are down near the bottom of the table, that shows you just how much of a live wire he is going forwards. As I said, only 20, so the potential he's got there is obviously quite clear, and you can see him really kicking on in the years ahead and becoming a leading light at this level potentially. Luton's up next, Billy. You're obviously a Luton fan, so you should know a fair amount about them. Who are you going to pick for this one?
Yeah, I did find it quite hard because there has been a few sparks this season, but I think it's hard to look past Elijah Adebayo, the impact he's had. You think Luton last year only scored 41 goals and got rid of our top goal scorer in James Collins and placing all that pressure on a 23-year-old. We brought Cameron Jerome into the fray, but we knew that he was going to play more of a deputy role. And yeah, I think it's all been put on Adebayo. Cornick's been brilliant, I think, as well. Those two have formed a really good partnership, a fearsome one. But I think Adebayo pips it because of, even when he's not playing well, his physicality, his presence, everything about him, he still causes problems. And I think for that reason, it adds a different dimension to Luton's game this year. And I think we're seeing defenders, we didn't really see it against Stoke, but we have seen it recently at Kenilworth Road. It just cannot handle him whatsoever. I think that he's getting into a sort of a period now where Nathan Jones has said that whoever's looking at him will need a really big checkbook because of what he can offer and what he can go on to achieve in his career. But for me, he's a player that can only progress with Luton at the moment. I don't think he's ready for a big move. I think that he's still learning his trade, and for that reason, yeah, I hope to see him in a Luton shirt for much longer.
Yeah, I think I agree with you this one. I think Adebayo's been really excellent for Luton so far. I think Harry Cornick does deserve a mention as well. 7 goals this year. He's having a really good campaign in the Championship. The Hatters, the likes of Pelly, Ruddock and Panzu as well. They're always going to be in the conversation, I think. But yeah, I think I agree with you there, Billy. Adebayo is certainly shining for Luton at the moment. Up next, we've got Middlesbrough. Chris Wilder in charge there now. It's just been his first week in the job. Who'd you pick for Borough, Billy?
There's a few good shouts. I think I've been impressed with Matt Crooks when I've seen him. Martin Paero, I think, has got a big future ahead of him. There's a few decent players around, but I think who's impressed me so far is Sol Bamba. Speaking when I went to watch Luton Middlesbrough the other day, I was speaking to people within the Middlesbrough press, and they were talking about how brilliant he's been, and that they seem to be giving him man of the match every game because of his performances and his leadership and pretty much everything he brings to that back line. And to be fair, I didn't think at 36 years old he'd still be as important as he is, but he's proven that. And I think this is a year where the experienced Championship defenders are really shining, and he's another player that sort of fits that bracket.
Yeah, it's great to see as well him doing so well for Middlesbrough after that illness that he had not so long ago. Great to see him back in amongst it. My pick's going to be Paddy McNair. I think as from what you can see from what Borough fans say about him on Twitter, he seems to be a regular good performer. A couple of goals, a couple of assists this year for him. He's come into his prime years now. Perhaps when he was at Sunderland, he was written off a little bit, but at Borough he fills in lots of different positions. Always does a pretty decent job as well, and you can normally rely on him to get stuck in as well. He's a real sort of quality Championship player. He's always going to compete and gives Borough, plenty of different attributes, both going forwards and defensively. So he's my pick for Middlesbrough. Up next, the Millwall. Billy, I guess there's probably one standout pick with the Lions.
Yeah, very hard to look past Jed Wallace. I think everything he brings, creativity, goals, work rate, relentlessness in the midfield as well when operating there. I think he's a very, very important player to what Millwall do, and similar to what I said about Huddersfield. I think if you take him out the side, then Millwall lose their way. I think Hutchinson's also been really good, and from when he's been missing, you can sort of see that glaring void he leaves as well. Also been impressed with Daniel Ballard, and I think he's one that will go on to enjoy a really, really successful career. But I think at this moment in time, and going even back the last 3 years, Wallace has been so important with his forward play and what he does off the ball as well.
Yeah, and I have to agree completely with Jed Wallace. He's just been excellent for Millwall for a number of years now. I guess the only thing you could say is it's surprising he's not in the Premier League at this stage, and that sort of underlines the quality that he has and the consistent level he's been producing as well. So I think we're pretty agreed on Millwall's best player being Jed Wallace at the moment. Up next, Nottingham Forest. Who have you got for them, Billy?
Again, this is another one that's quite difficult at the moment. I think just about pipping it is Brennan Johnson. I think what he brings and what he promises to bring in what remains of the season could be very, very important for Nottingham Forest. I mean, he's unbelievably quick, but also has the intelligence, has the mindset to succeed. And I think he's a player that Steve Cooper is delighted to have at his disposal and will continue to cause problems. His end product as well is something that you don't really associate with an up-and-coming winger. You always feel that their end product needs to improve, and that's how they're going to become a great player. But I think he's already got that. And I think that he's a constant threat. And for that reason, I think he just about edges it for me. But Joe Worrell, I think, is also a very, very strong competitor for this category. Also, Bryce Samba as well. I've been really impressed with him. And I think Forest are a really strong team, and I'm excited to see what happens in what remains of the season from them.
Yeah, I think Brennan Johnson is obviously a really good shout, and the quality and potential he's got, he's going to really go far in the game. My pick's going to be Joe Worrell. Like you mentioned, Billy there, he's a real top defender, particularly at this level. Normally Forest can rely on him. He's really grown in stature in recent years in the middle of that Forest defence. Obviously, he knows more than most what it means to represent Forest as well, and I think he carries himself pretty well in terms of representing the club and stuff like that. So, he's only 24. I think it's easy to forget because he seems like he's been around for quite a while, but certainly a player that will go on to have a bright career and he'll be looking to get himself into the Premier League. Obviously, ideally with Forest, but he regularly gets linked away as well, doesn't he? So I'm sure we'll see him in the top flight sooner rather than later. Up next, we've got Peterborough United. Who's your pick for this one, Billy?
I've gone Siriki Dembele. He's a player that can sort of pull tricks out of the bag and pull excellent performances out of the bag. And he's an unpredictable player, but I think what he brings is flair, a real sense of an ability to progress the play for Peterborough. I've been impressed with Ronnie Edwards. Obviously, a really young talent that's going to go on to great things, I'm sure. Also, been impressed with Jack Taylor as well. I think when he's come back into the side, he's looked like a really, really good player, and he was really important last season, and he's maintained that into the Championship. I think Siriki Dembele, what he brings in an attacking sense is he basically incites fear, and he's got that sort of flair and attacking ability to consistently cause problems. And he's been a player that like what I said earlier, every time I've seen him, he's looked a real problem. So maybe it's just me and what I've seen, but yeah, for me, it has to be Siriki Dembele.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you there, Billy. I think there was always going to be interesting if Dembele could do it in the Championship. Obviously, worked his way through the EFL with the likes of Grimsby and then Peterborough, linked away in the summer. And I guess perhaps clubs wanted to see what's he going to do in the Championship before making a real play for him, but it looks like so far he's adapted nicely to the second tier. A couple of mentions: Johnson Clark-Harris is having a decent season. He'd obviously like to score a few more goals, but he's looked fairly handy at this level. I think Oliver Norburn as well has been, a little bit of a surprise really in many senses. It wasn't necessarily a transfer that caught the eye in the summer, but he's done really well for Peterborough so far this year. But I do agree with you, Billy. I'm going with Dembele as well as Peterborough's best player at the moment. Up next, we've got Preston North End. Who's your pick here?
I think it's quite hard to look past Emil Rees at the moment. Definitely providing Preston with somewhat positivity at the moment. Obviously not the best mood inside the camp at the moment, but I think with Emil Rees, he's a player that can help them get out of the situation they're in. I think, especially watching him against Luton, I know it comes back to that, but he just completely tore us apart. And the first goal he scored was up there with one of the best goals I've seen scored against us. So he's got that ability to score important goals and take the game away, and also has that sort of relentlessness in him. He'll work very, very hard in that front line, and that's what you want in a forward. He's also intelligent running as well. I think when he did play against Luton, he was difficult to mark because he was going in behind, but he was also dropping off and linking the play that way. So yeah, there's quite a lot of dimensions to him, and for that reason, I think he's going to continue to impress and continue to score goals.
Yeah, 7 goals, decent return so far in the Championship for Emil Rees. He's certainly a player, like you say, that's going to be a nuisance for Championship defenders for the rest of the season. You imagine he works hard, can hold the ball up well, runs in behind as well, and clearly shown he's got a fair eye for goal as well this season. My pick's going to be Ben Whiteman. When he joined from Doncaster, it looked like an eye-catching sign. I think it spoke volumes at how Doncaster sort of tailed off at second half of last season, League One, with the likes of Whiteman leaving. I think he's so far been pretty decent for Preston. They perhaps want to see even more of him. Got 4 goals so far though from midfield. He's a player that's at 25 coming towards his prime years, and he's certainly someone that you look at the Championship midfielders. He's a player that when he's on form, you'd have to consider him as one of the better ones in the second tier. So he's my pick for the men from Deepdale. Up next, Queen's Park Rangers. Billy, who's your pick for the Hoops?
I've gone for Rob Dickie. I know QPR have conceded a fair few goals, a few too many goals this season. That's why I think that they haven't got a stronger position in the playoffs. But I think that's just a result of the way they play, expansive style of football, fullbacks that fly forward. But yeah, Rob Dickie, what he offers is real physical presence. He wins everything that comes near him, it seems. But he's also got that ability on the ball to start attacks. And we've seen with his marauding runs down sort of the right flank sometimes, and seen him score goals, seen him get assists. And it's just an extra dimension to an already strong attacking lineup. But I think Chair also deserves a shout here, because he's been very, very influential. And I think last few weeks you can definitely see that teams are setting up to try and nullify his threat, and that's allowed Willock a lot more time and space when both are playing on the pitch. And I think Willock's a player as well who's got that ability too. I think Dykes as well has done quite well this season. Still not too sure about who is the best player to start up front for them, because they do have 3 very strong options. And when you play Willock and Chair, it's quite difficult to fit 2 more in. Johansson's also been quite strong as well this season. Maybe not as good as he was last year, but when he sort of the more recent performances, I think he's coming back into those sort of performances that we've seen last year. But for me, it has to be Rob Dickie.
Yeah, Rob Dickie is a great shout. My pick's going to be Sedi Dying, actually. We haven't mentioned too many goalkeepers so far on this show, but I think Dying is one that's certainly Premier League level, or at least on the verge of it. Had to bide his time to get into the QPR lineup, had a lot of loans, or the likes of Liam Kelly and Joe Lumley around, but he got his chance last season, took it with both hands, quite literally. And, he's shining again this season. He's certainly one of the best goalkeepers in the division. Like you say, but lots of good players at QPR, like Willock and Chair and Stephen Johansson as well, Charlie Austin, Linda Dykes, obviously Rob Dickie. There's lots of good players through that spine, but I think it all starts with Dying at the back. Pulls off a number of great saves regularly when called upon, so he's my pick for QPR. Up next, we've got Reading. Who's your pick for the Royals, Billy?
I think for me, it has to be John Swift. He's been really impressive once again in terms of his goal contributions. I think it's been very important, not just scoring goals, it's the timing of the goals and the importance of them. He's a player that just oozes class when you watch him, though. Always seems to find a pass that even when you're watching it from TV, you can't even see. So I don't know how he manages to do it game in, game out. He's a player that, he's just very, very exciting to watch, and has the ability, in my opinion, to go in and play Premier League football. Don't think he should be leaving it too long, because, professional footballer's career, he's not the longest in the world. So I think that a move to the Premier League should be on the cards for him. A player similarly that I feel that it would leave a big void if he did leave. But one thing with Reading is that the situation they find themselves in, they're having to put a lot of young players on the bench at the moment, but I think it's invaluable experience for them and something that might actually bode well for them in the future. Yeah,
they've certainly got a good crop of youngsters coming through, as they regularly seem to do. I think John Swift is a pretty good shout, though. He's my pick too. 8 goals and 7 assists so far in the Championship. Can't really argue with that. Got some good players Reading going forward, likes of Alan Halilovic and Ovia Jaria. There's some good combinations there, but Swift is absolutely a standout player so far for Reading this season. Up next, Sheffield United. Who's your pick there, Billy?
Struggled with Sheffield United because I think what we've seen is his players show excellent form, but not being able to sustain it. And I think that's been a key feature for Sheffield United this season, that sort of notion of inconsistency. But purely going from what I believe he can still do and what he's done in the past. I think George Baldock, brilliant player. The amount of energy he has to get up and down the wing, defensively strong, provides a lot of attacking threat going forward too. So he's a player that has it all, in my opinion. Proved himself in the Premier League as well a couple of seasons back. And yeah, he's a player that he's facing competition this year from Jayden Bogle, but I think that what Baldock has is that experience, that undoubted ability, and that's going to make it quite hard for Bogle this season to nail down a permanent spot in the team.
Yeah, I've gone for Sander Berger. Perhaps not played as much as Sheffield United fans would have liked so far this season, but I don't think there's any denying his quality when he is on form. Obviously linked with a plethora of top European sides in the summer, ended up staying with the Blades, which fans were naturally happy about. I think they'd obviously want to see him having more of an impact this season. When he is on it, he does look a cut above Championship level, in all fairness. So he's my pick in terms of the best player at Sheffield United at the moment. But obviously, yeah, he does need to be on that pitch a little bit more than he has been so far. Up next, we've got Stoke. Billy, who's your pick there?
A player who frustrated me for 90 minutes on Saturday, Harry Souttar, just such an excellent defender and first player that's completely nullified Adebayo, in my opinion. What we can say about him is that he's so dominant in the air, strong in the challenge as well. Physically, he's just so dominant, in my opinion. But he's also similar to Dickie. He's got that ability to play the ball out from the back and progress the play. He's composed. He doesn't mind where on the pitch he gets the ball. He'll continue to progress it. And he's a player that, again, has been linked with Premier League clubs for a reason, and that's his consistent performances and his influence in that back line. I think Nick Powell's also been a very strong player this season. His injury at the moment is perhaps ruling him out from contention for taking this number one spot. Midfield as well, majority of players they've got in there, all very, very capable players. Jacob Brown as well, scoring some goals. And the wing-backs as well have been an excellent source of creativity and chances this season. So, yeah, I think they're another side that perhaps the team are performing very well, and it's less about the individuals that they have.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. Some very good players at Stoke. I think do have to agree that Harry Souttar is probably the standout at the moment. Only 23, but a real physically imposing defender. Reads the game very well, good on the ball as well. He's kind of the complete package almost already. As a centre-half, you can certainly see him moving into the Premier League sooner rather than later. Stoke will just hope that it is with them that he does it. Swansea up next. Billy, who have you got for Russell Martin's men?
I've got Jamie Patterson. As a few people said, probably the best free transfer this summer. What a player he's proven to be and has proved to be in the past. I think Middlesbrough had him on trial at the start of the season, but opted against it. So sorry to remind you, Borough fans, but yeah, you could have had Jamie Patterson. He's been excellent for me. His ability on the ball, his vision for me, what he sees in front of him is nothing short of magnificent. He's got that really good partnership with Pirro as well. Those two have been working really, really well together. But I think also Oliver Nutcham is a player I think he's going to be a very good player, be really important within the Swansea team this season. Grimes as well is a very, very good player. And sort of having Patterson, Nutcham and Grimes all within that midfield is going to be a difficult side to break down this season. And I think we're seeing Russell Martin's men come into their sort of best at the moment. And well, I say that after a 4-0 defeat, but yeah, I think we're going to see them march towards the playoff positions this season.
Yeah, certainly. Overall, they've been looking pretty good, Swansea, under Russell Martin in recent weeks, aside from that defeat against Bournemouth. I'm going for Joel Pirro, though. You obviously mentioned there, Billy. I think he's really stepped up this year. You probably wondered going into the start of the season where the goal was going to come from for the Swans, having lost the likes of Ayew in the summer. But Pirro's really stepped up. 9 goals so far from the 13 starts that he's had. A few more appearances off the bench as well. Only 22, an array of finishes he's put out as well. Looks a real bright spark. Never shy to have a shot on goals. I think the likes of him and the Patterson, as you mentioned as well, having a really good season for Swansea, and they're going to be key if they do make the playoffs. But Piro's my pick for the Welsh club. And finally, we come to West Brom. Who's your pick there, Billy?
I think it has to be Alex Mowatt. Mentioned him earlier with Barnsley. If Mowatt was still there, then he'd be head and shoulders over everybody there. And he's a player that could have even had a Premier League move this summer. I think he deserves it. He's probably got the best left foot I've seen in the Championship. Probably a few others that would have their say there. But I think what he does is so creative from deeper positions in the midfield. And he formed a really good partnership, I thought, with Livermore. Probably more to do with Mowatt, because I think he's been phenomenal so far in a West Brom shirt. Some of the goals he scores, it's out of this world, really. And he's got faith in his ability. He knows what he can do with the football, and that sort of makes him an ambitious player on the ball. And yeah, we really trust his ability, and there's no reason why not, because he's very, very good.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with Alex. I was always interested to see how he's going to settle in at West Brom. I did think he might be eligible for a Premier League move in the summer from Barnsley, but West Brom managed to get him, obviously, with Valérien Ismaël going there as well. He settled in very quickly, become a pretty key player for West Brom. And like you said, the quality he has on that ball with that left foot is really quite something, but he's never scared to put in a challenge as well. Really sort of busy player in the middle of the park, the sort of player you need to challenge at the right end of the Championship. And he's another one that you could see, settling well in the Premier League in the near future. Obviously, West Brom will be looking to achieve that with him. That brings an end to this morning's debate show on Football League World TV. We've been looking at the best players we feel is at each Championship side. Hopefully you agree with our picks. If you don't, then that's fine. No one's sent us any abuse in the comments, so that's the main thing. Coming up on Football League World TV later on today at 2:00, we've got another debate show. Who are the top 3 best Championship wingers? Ned Holmes is hosting that one. He's joined by Ben Wignall. And then at 3:00, we've got Crew Fan takeover show. Marcus Alley is hosting that one. He'll be with the chaps from the Railway Men podcast. Billy, for now though, thanks for joining me, and we will speak to you very soon.